All right, I'd like to call this August 8th, 2022 Sylvania Board of Education meeting to order. Adam, you call the roll?
Greg Feller.
Here.
Tammy Lavalette.
Here.
Kim Conklin.
Here.
Julie Hoffman.
Here.
Jill Johnson is absent at the moment.
She will be here in a few minutes, yeah. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Flags in the back. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Dr. Motley, we are with you.
Thank you, Mr. Feller. Good evening, everyone. Happy August 8th. It's hard to believe that we have the start of school just around the corner. It's been a bit hot and muggy in Sylvania, but I think the rain is good for all of our flowers and the grass and our wild animals, so that's a good thing, and I'm happy about that. Mr. Feller, tonight I'm going to divert from my traditional superintendent's report. We have a special guest with us here tonight. His name is Mr. Doug Palmer, and he is our OSBA, which stands for the Ohio School Boards Association, transportation consultant. And he's here to share a few words about the state of transportation, and if folks have any questions, where they are to direct them in the future. So, Mr. Palmer, on behalf of our Board of Education and myself, thank you for traveling up here from Columbus, correct? To be here today. Thank you so much.
Well, it's a pleasure to present in front of you. It's to speak for a few words. The state of transportation is not in good shape this year statewide. We are having trouble everywhere having enough bus drivers to get the kids to school safely like we really want to do. We don't want to impact school children the way we're forced to do now with the way the transportation is becoming an issue. Along with fuel prices, we have a driver shortage, and that driver shortage is actually a result of a few things. One of them is our last mile delivery services that have sprung up all over. They've taken the drivers that would normally come into work for short hour staff, short hour work, and they're gone. They can drive their own van, they can make their wages, they can set their own hours. And so this last mile, the Uber Eats, the Lyft, all of these Uber things, Amazon that has hired these last mile drivers, and the last mile means from the warehouse out to the homes or businesses, that last mile of delivery service. This has really impacted our deliveries of our drivers for making these deliveries has really impacted our deliveries of students, because these were the people that were interested in driving for us before, but now they can own their own business, set their own hours, and do their own thing. And that has really affected our quality and quantity of drivers that are left for us. The other thing is many school districts are facing this driver shortage by eliminating their CNP partners, their community non-public schools. And that's not good for children, it's not good for districts, it's not good for our partners. Our partnerships need to be strong. We need to have a strong community. We need to face these communities as a community-wide issue, not as a us versus them. We don't get anywhere. I think most of us has heard Lou Holtz's talk when he had the football team. The offense grabbed one end and the defense grabbed the other end, and the offense outpulled the defense, and the offensive players started celebrating. And he said, why would you celebrate a win? Half of your team is disheartened, half of your team is disappointed, half of your team is down. That's not a win for the team. That's the way it is in school busing too. When we eliminate people, or we have this shortage where we can't provide service, we see that as a loss, and not just to the district, but as a loss to our community partners, and especially our CNP partners. We face a lot of things. The price of fuel is twice what it was last year. Parts are up 25 to 30%. We're going to face a budget crunch along with a driver shortage. It's kind of like, it's also, I kind of want to relate school bus transportation like going through a grocery store. Every year is like a different trip through the grocery store. You know, you have different items in the cart. You look for different things, and it takes a different length of time, but it's a large matrix to make sure that you're getting everything that you need. You don't want to run up and down that aisle 2 or 3 times. You want to get them one pass through. If you go in with a hand basket just to pick up a few things, that can be done pretty quickly. Board, I have also spoken with the Catholic Diocese and ODE about some options, and what we had talked about once was helping our CNP partners become bus owners and hauling their own children, because our lunchroom staff from public schools don't go over and fix their lunches. Our custodial staff doesn't go over and fix or clean the buildings. And they can really do a great job with their own students. They can be reimbursed through ODE, and there's two codes. There's an Ohio Revised Code 332707, and there's administrative code 3301-83-24 that allows non-public schools, non-public districts, chartered non-publics, to actually charge a fee to do the transportation. Like public schools cannot charge a fee to parents, non-public schools can actually charge a fee. So they are much more easily can adapt to rising prices, or they can much more easily flex than what our public schools can. So those are options. I would like our community partners to know that they have those options. And I would be much willing to work through Dr. Motley with any questions that you have out of this short presentation tonight, these short words from me. Any questions come up, I will gladly work through Dr. Motley to answer your questions. I appreciate your time, and I do appreciate, and I have a lot of empathy for the board. I also have a lot of empathy for the parents that are trying to find ways for their kids to get to school. Let's work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Any questions from our Board of Education or comments? All righty. I think we're good, Mr. Palmer. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And one clarification, I'm sorry, I keep having you turn around.
That's okay.
One clarification, I know that you spoke about CNP schools or partners and being able to operate their own transportation services. They would also receive, under that model, the flow of the dollars that come to our district for transportation, allocate those same funds to those entities that may choose to go in that direction, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
They would fill out the same reports that all public districts have to fill out, the transportation report T1 and the transportation report T2. Those in the fall, that's the service level. The T1 is the service level. What students, what buses, how many counts, that's the count in count week in October. That report would have to be filled out. And then in the fall, or in the summer, July through August, you fill out a T2 report, and that's what you report the cost of your service to ODE. Those two reports are how your schools receive funding for transportation.
So we would almost serve as the fiscal agent, transfer those funds to a CNP if they chose to go.
So they would get those funds directly from ODE. Yeah, they would
Interesting.
fill
Okay.
out the report. Those funds would flow directly to the CNP partners.
Those
yeah.
tax dollars.
The community
Okay.
non-publics, yes.
Alrighty.
Okay, I do have a question.
Yeah.
You said you spoke with the Ohio Diocese,
Mm-hmm.
and are they open to this option?
So that's an option that they have that they haven't heard before. So yes. So we had a very lively discussion, the Catholic Diocese ODE, and where and what they could do and what benefit that would be. And yes, and that was a very popular option. And again, they wouldn't have enough. I'm going to veer off just a little bit and make this just a little bit longer. You know, if you have assets here that aren't being used, those could be transferred. If the drivers need to be trained, you already have the training staff that can train those drivers. Your busing already has the mechanics to fix the buses. You can partner with them and work out contracts to be able to provide that service to the CNPs, so they don't have to shop around or they don't have to develop their own transportation department. They can work with you and do that, and I think that's a very logical step. As we move forward, the other thing that was reported to me from the Catholic Diocese is that person that we were talking to thought that a Catholic school, if they were going to service their own constituents or their own population, they thought that they would be able to find drivers much easier than finding drivers to drive for a public where they aren't servicing their own congregational needs. So those were the items that came out of that talk. Thank you for the question.
Are there any Catholic dioceses in the state that are already doing this model, or is this just a new idea altogether?
I'm not sure about Columbus, but Columbus may be doing that because Columbus is severely short drivers, like 200 drivers short from transporting students this year. They're really, really short. Before COVID, they had 750 bus routes. Last year, they only had 550 drivers. What I've learned is they're down another 150 drivers starting this school year from last year. So there are areas of the country that are absolutely looking for different scenarios to service a different population.
I can also share some experience from Northeast Ohio. There are a number of CNPs that operate their own transportation or their own bus routes. I know Hoban, I believe, Walsh St. Jesuit, having an issue saying that tonight, but Walsh does, Hoban does. The smaller ones do not. They always collaborate with school districts a little differently, but I do know that we do have some large Northeast Ohio schools that do provide their own, CNPs, provide their own transportation.
But essentially, we could share a bus garage that they can store
Absolutely.
their buses, mechanics,
Yep.
training.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
I think the healthy part about that model is we maintain a partnership. It's not abandoning, but
Right.
it's just working differently and supporting all the students, but it's definitely a partnership.
And a good part of that, if they actually had some extra capacity, your Sylvania schools, public schools, could contract with that CNP to haul some of your students. I mean, so they could actually, I mean, it's just a better way to do business. Because school transportation is more like a business than anything else. You have a certain length of time, you have a time frame to get everybody to and from school, and it's very, very important in the kids' education also. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall I continue?
Good.
Thank you, yes. We have a couple of presentations for those in the audience this evening, or for those who may watch this at a later date. I am pleased to introduce Melissa McDonald, our Director of Student Support Services, and Mrs. Susie Felver, our McCord Junior High School Principal. And they have some special guests with them tonight who will also join them. But the two ladies are here tonight to share a presentation on safety and security in Sylvania schools. So ladies, thank you for being here this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Over here we also have Chief Nye with the Fire Department, Officer Jeff Matuszewski with the Township Police, and Sergeant Pack with Sylvania Police Department. So thank you guys for attending. It's a continuous partnership that we have with those entities, and you'll hear a little more about that as we go through our presentation. So we had a safety and security committee district-wide that was established in 2012. This committee does meet monthly. We either meet as a large group every other month, and then we meet within our subcommittees every other month. And some of our current subcommittees are active shooter training, building and emergency plans, facilities, maintenance, mental health and education, Raptor system and our visitor policy, technology, and transportation. And we'll touch on all of those as we move along throughout the presentation.
So we do have a partnership with our local police departments. Both Northview and Southview have an SRO within the building that they have on site every day. But we also have community officers through the township. Officer Matuszewski is one of them, who's in and out of the schools very frequently. In addition, we have a couple of other city police officers who work within the schools as community officers as well. I know that we've used them as a resource at McCord. I know that Arbor Hills uses the township for both DARE education as well as resources when situations come up.
Our active shooter training started with our administrative team. It was the ALICE training back in 2011. We started off with training the admin team, and then we trained all staff and students district-wide back in 2012. We're transitioning to calling that an active shooter training, just to keep with the times and using the same language as our local law enforcement. We do quarterly drills with students in each building. Each room in the building has what is called a go bucket, and it is a 5-gallon bucket that has supplies in case there is an emergency. There's some basic first aid equipment in there, along with some other items as well. Each building, each school building, all 12 of them have what we call a safe room. And in that room, they have access to the PA system, they have access to the cameras in the buildings, and they also have a radio that directly goes to dispatch in the event of an emergency. So that safe room goes along with the theory of our active shooter training, where someone would be in that room watching the cameras and be able to relay real-time information to the building so that people can make decisions on what is best for them to survive the situation. We train our new staff at our new teacher orientation. We're actually doing that tomorrow with, I believe, 51 new teachers. In that partnership and that training, we will also have our local agencies there as well. There will be a presentation along with some scenarios. Along with our partnership with the city and township and fire, we have held several full-scale trainings, and what is really unique about that is the philosophy shift has changed over the years. Before, when there was an active shooter situation, your emergency responders, when the ambulance would arrive, they would wait until the situation was secure, and then they would go in. What we have found out, and we'll talk more a little bit about this later on, is a lot of victims weren't dying from the impact of a gunshot wound, they were actually bleeding out. So because of that, that philosophy has changed, and now our emergency responders will enter the building with the local law enforcement so that they can start tending to victims to try and eliminate the bleeding out. We have also trained all of our teaching staff on how to stop the bleed, which was a partnership with ProMedica as well. And I believe that's mentioned later on in the presentation.
So another, over the course of the last handful of years, decade really, as unfortunately school shootings have increased or as they have taken place, I think with each one we learn a little bit more. And in 2015 into 2016, we started looking at how can we make our buildings more secure. And so that came with some upgrades across all of our buildings, one of them being the secondary door restraints. So even if you go into a room that you don't have a key for and you don't have the ability to lock, every one of our doors has a secondary door restraint, which hangs on the inside of the door. There is a latch on both the door and the door frame that you can slide that in quickly. It's labeled very clearly. The kids all know what it is. The staff know what it is. No one, what's nice is that it has become so commonplace that people don't look at it, try to play with it, don't move it. They know that this is for emergency situations only, and they have that as a backup, so you can fortify your door with just a little bit more reinforcement in a situation where the safest option would be to shelter in place.
To piggyback on that, I would like to give Alan Bacho, who is a retiree of the district, a lot of credit. This is unique to Sylvania Schools. We created this ourselves. Along with the police and fire, these were tested. They took an axe to it, they took it to their shooting range, they shot at it, and they were not able to get through a door. So a lot of credit goes to the hard work that went into that.
You said that's in every room?
Correct. This is new. This past year, our counselors, in working with Mr. Zeroff, created and updated our district-wide crisis plan. And in that, it has annual events. It defines what a school crisis is, how to implement the plan. There's a district-wide phone tree, checklists for staff roles during a crisis. There are sample scripts and announcements. along with sample letters that may need to go out to families. There's team contact information, student support and resources, media procedures, adjustments due to COVID. There's a resource file, and there's also a section on debriefing when we have a crisis in our district.
So just to kind of add on to this, the crisis plan is not the same as the emergency operations plan or a safety plan. The crisis plan would be specific to a situation like you have a death of a staff or student member or a student from your school, where you may have a lot of entities to try and reach out to and make sure that you're taking care of a lot of different people, where things, you want to make sure that balls don't get dropped and communication stays on, but you're also dealing with a potentially a grieving population that you want to make sure goes as well as it possibly can. So along with the other upgrades that I mentioned previously with our secondary door restraints, we also installed Lexan film on a lot of our side panels and entryways. Any classroom door that has a window in it also has Lexan film. And what that is, for those who are not aware, it is, I don't know that I can qualify it as bulletproof. It's a bullet deterring. Resistant. It's bullet resistant, that it does slow things down. And ultimately, we've given presentations for active shooter training year after year. If we've been an administrator, your goal is not to stop someone, it is to frustrate them so they move on to someplace else and keep yourself safe. So this was just one other way to deter, to keep kids safe and staff safe, so that we're preventing we're preventing any major catastrophe until our first responders can arrive.
And a lot of the research out there on these events shows that if the intruder has some kind of barrier, they move on. So what that Lexan does is it stops the glass from shattering, so they wouldn't necessarily be able to get into the room. The bullet will penetrate, but the glass will not automatically shatter. So yeah, I will talk a little bit about our safety drills, because that's my section of my subcommittee for the Safety and Security Committee. But we do 4 safety drills a year. That's required by the state. We report those to both local and state agencies. Of the 4 drills that are conducted each year, only one of them can be a tabletop discussion, where you perhaps, I know in the wintertime when it's not perhaps a good time to go outside and do evacuation drills, I will have a discussion in my lunchroom with all of my kids at captive audience. That counts as a tabletop discussion. We talk about what happens if an intruder comes, what do we look for, what are our escape routes, what do we do in public settings that aren't a school setting, when I go to a movie theater, when I go to a church, what are ways for me to stay safe and be alert and aware of my surroundings. So that's a tabletop discussion. One of those a year takes place. We do evacuation drills, lockdown drills, and then full-scale drills, which would include the coordination with our local law enforcement. Usually police and fire are involved in that. It would also involve some sort of evacuation to your secondary site or sites, because most buildings have 2. It would involve potentially some form of reunification, practicing how to reunite students and families. So we do those every 3 years, and again, those are reported to the state. On the state reporting side of things, we're required to assess what went well, what didn't go well, what can we improve on. So you have to list 3 areas that you guys are doing well in, and 3 areas that you are focusing on for the next year. And we have to report 1 of those a year to the state. We do monthly fire drills, and we do 2 tornado drills. The requirement for the state is once at the beginning of the school year, and then once every month during tornado season that school is in session. Well, tornado season is April and May, so we do them in April and May. We have also done de-escalation training with our office staff, because our secretaries, they're the ones fielding phone calls. They're the first one in the office that someone, when they come in, if they're upset, So a lot of our office staff have received de-escalation training, and that's something that our administrative team also receives through CPI training as an admin team. We take a refresher course on that every June so that we are up to date with that as well. Stop the Bleed, I previously spoke on that, but that was a partnership with ProMedica in 2019. And like I said, all of our teaching staff received that training.
So we have had an upgrade in our cameras. I will specifically say in our bus cameras as well as our exterior buildings. I believe all the buildings got exterior cameras. Very high quality, very user friendly. We've been able to put that to good use in both the bus situation as well as the exterior cameras in each of the buildings. Those the interior cameras. Still, we're working on securing funds to upgrade the interior cameras to the quality that we have on both the buses and the exterior and main office cameras. But again, we started that a number of years ago, and then each year have been able to do some upgrades, specifically in regards to the bus cameras. We've been able to install bus cameras a little bit each year through different grants that we've had.
And the main office cameras go in conjunction with a buzzer system at each building. In order to enter the building, you have to be buzzed in, and there's a camera in that entryway so the office staff can see who they are letting in instead of just hitting the button to unlock the door. We also have a Raptor system that was installed in 2019. It is used for our visitors that are entering the building. It does a background check on them as well as printing a tag that has their picture on it. So when they are walking the building, you can clearly see who is a visitor. It's not just a generic tag where they write their name down, you know that it's official. We recently just had a meeting with the Raptor system, and we're looking at utilizing some more of the sources that system has, which includes tracking volunteers and possibly doing some background checks for volunteers and tiering those background checks. I know Mr. Tyberski and I were talking about it today, and we plan on meeting this week or next week about that. It also has the ability to track some of our safety drills and our safety management. So we're gonna look at unlocking some of that at a few schools and trial that and expand that as this year goes on. So I'm looking forward to that piece of Raptor.
So we also have, in regards to technology and trying to keep kids and staff safe, we have a program called the Lightspeed system, which starting this year we will be moving over to GoGuardian. It monitors what students are doing, students and staff I assume, on their computers, any school device. If they are logged into their school account, it is monitoring what's going on. So if there is an unsafe search, kids are looking up something about weapons, or there is more frequently, unfortunately, we see self-harm alerts. Those come immediately, they get flagged, they go to our technology director and assistant director, and then they go to, depending on what school that student goes to, the building administrators as well as the school counselors. It does come on the weekend. It alerts you during the evening. It alerts you during the school day, so you can look. It shows you exactly in real time what is that student searching and what was before and after that, so you can see screenshots. You're able to unflag things, like say, okay, this isn't dangerous. For instance, I have an English teacher who does a Holocaust unit every year, and I get a lot of flags every time they start their research unit. And then I can go ahead and set that. So nope, this is not dangerous, this side of things. However, it's really nice to be able to get those alerts, pull the student out of class immediately, check their pulse for how are you feeling, what made you look this up, what can we do to help, and we reach out, we're able to connect with parents, and it's really a team effort with both the counseling staff and the administrators in each building. But it is an incredibly valuable resource that I can say 100% every time I've had to call a parent to say, hey, I'm so sorry for calling you on a Saturday evening. I just got an alert that your son or daughter is looking up something that hinted at self-harm, and I want to make sure that they're safe and that they're okay. And the parents are so grateful that I've had more compliments in that regard to this software that we have. And so I'm glad that we're keeping it going and then, kind of enhancing it with this new Go Guardian.
I know that personally, I've unfortunately had to make some of those phone calls after hours, and if nobody answers, you call the numbers and nobody's answering, it's not a message you want to leave. So kudos to our police department. I know I've called Jeff on the weekends or in the evening and said, hey, can you send a crew over just to do a safety check on a family? And once again, the parents are just very appreciative of that. We also have behavioral threat assessments. Our administrative team went to a training back in 2004, and we had a 2014, and we created a subcommittee and we developed our own behavioral threat assessment form. So when we do have a threat of some kind in a building, we get our crisis team together. That's typically your principals, counselors, maybe a teacher, a case manager. It kind of depends on the situation and that student who all is involved in that crisis team. And we're able to look at the whole picture and decide if it's a low, medium, or a high level threat. I know that our police department has also sat at the table for some of those to come up and devise a plan for when the student returns, whether, if it's a minimal check or minimal low-level threat, maybe it's a weekly check-in with a counselor. If it's something a little more serious, we go into more detail and provide more wraparound services for those students as needed.
So a couple of years ago, we realized that we were focused so much on keeping kids safe during the school days. We have a lot of people in and out of our buildings. We have 800 plus staff members and 7,800 students. Did I come close to that number? We realized that these buildings are used well into the night, especially our high schools and our junior highs, and we're not taking into consideration how to properly address the safety during those times. And so we had another subcommittee at that time work together to put together this standard response protocol. We have signage in all of our buildings. We came through this subcommittee. There were announcements that were created that if you attend any of our high school events, you'll hear that they go over before the national anthem or right after the national anthem as teams are lining up, because we want people to know what to do in case of an emergency. We repeat it. I'm sure some people are tired of hearing it, but we want to make sure that we do what we can in case of the worst case scenario. So again, that was something that we put together again in 2015 because we have so many people in our buildings after hours. All right, I'll talk a little bit about this because it's a passion of mine, I guess. I'm a nerd like that. So we, part of our grant, it's not a separate subcommittee, but part of our Safety and Security Committee is to always look at grants as they come available, if we can, to pay for some of the things that we need. This committee, each of the subcommittees meets and they come up with things that would help enhance the safety and security of our buildings. Sometimes that comes with a price tag, and I know that everybody at this table knows that money just doesn't grow on trees. So we have in recent years started exploring other grants. I know for the last at least 4 years we've applied for and been approved for the Ohio School Safety Grant. That is it's an amount, that's why it changes annually. It's an amount designated per student in the district. We've been approved every year for the max amount. That grant, the second bullet, has typically gone to things like increasing our bus cameras. We used it for crossing guard equipment that badly needed updated. We just recently partnered with the police department and sent them to some training. We have worked on, our mental health committee has brought in speakers. We've been able to use that for the budget there. And then obviously I mentioned the camera side of things. The fun one was the most recent announcement from Governor DeWine, and we were approved for the Ohio Facilities Commission safety grant for $100,000. So that will be coming this year. From my meeting today with the Ohio School Facilities Commission, he's got a whole bunch of different acronyms, but Brian Bollinger, he stated that the governor, as he announced at the School Safety Summit last week, will be putting more money out for grant recipients. So we are going to explore that and continue to look for other opportunities to fund some of the things that we need in our district and may not have immediate funds to pay for.
We also have just added, Governor DeWine established the Ohio School Safety Center to support schools. Yep. And we just partnered with them. We now have a tip line and a text line that will be accessible to families. It was added to our website, I believe, today. I don't know where Amy is, but I think it went up today. And each of our principals will be communicating that out with their families as well. So what that'll do is it's a phone line or a text. Any student, parent, any community member can call that line or send a text. They can leave a name or they can be anonymous, and they can report anything, and then that'll directly come back to the schools for us to look into it. These are some of the examples that it encourages people to report on: bullying, cyberbullying, self-harm, suicidal behaviors, withdrawn student behaviors, verbal or written threats, weapons or suspicious devices near school, gang-related activity or illegal drug use, and then any other unusual or suspicious behavior. We also have a partnership with Beyond Healthcare that started this past spring. We are doing a pilot program at Timberstone Junior High. We're rolling that out this school year. Beyond Healthcare will be providing a school-based therapist in the building to work with students. We're finalizing some release forms with Beyond Healthcare right now. And the goal is to branch that out into some elementary schools after Timberstone. So be prepared to hear more as that partnership grows. We've also had a partnership with RFS Behavioral Health, which is an in-school tackle program since 2017. We have 3 full-time case managers in our building and 2 therapists that serve students in Sylvania schools. Right now, there are students enrolled in tackle at Northview, Southview, Arbor Hills, Hillview, Maplewood, and McCord. We also, with that Beyond Healthcare partnership, we have included some mental health support for staff. So they partner with an agency called 1 in 5. So this school year, we are going to be able to provide some optional mental health support for staff that feel they may be in need of that. Every staff member is being asked to fill out a survey by the end of August. That's teachers, your custodians, your bus drivers, the administrative team, everybody, paraprofessionals. They will be filling out that survey. 1 in 5 will be looking at the results of that survey to conduct 2 different in-depth 60-minute options for staff members to attend by their building. And then they're also going to be providing monthly mindfulness for 30 minutes to each building. So that will be all 12 school buildings, and then the board office and the transportation office will be combined in one.
So we actually have, in this last school year or in the last calendar year, been adding quite a bit. If you've noticed, you've seen in these other slides coming or has come in 2022. We are adding some staff members to help support students here. We have a psychiatric nurse from ProMedica that will be joining us this year. We have a social worker that we are in the process of hiring for this school year. Again, we've added the Ohio Safer School tip line, and that again just came this summer with passage of a new bill from Governor DeWine. And then we added a board certified behavior analyst, BCBA, who worked, she started in the winter, I believe, and worked with all second semester in our buildings as needed, and then will continue on this coming school year. I would say, we're going to wrap this up, but I know that we've been in the process of creating and drafting the strategic plan over the course of the district, and I think that the Safety and Security Committee ties directly into those goals that the strategic plan will focus on, and their vision and their mission. So we really just want to continue to provide a safe environment for staff, students, visitors in the building. We want to make sure that our Safety and Security Committee connects to all facets of education. So it may be mental health, it might be transportation, it might be improving our facilities, it might be training our students or our officers who work with students. It is changing. Our committee is changing every year because school safety is changing. And I appreciate the fact that Sylvania Schools makes it a priority and changes with it. So thank you for your attention.
Just to piggyback on that, I'm so proud of Sylvania Schools. I've been an original member of this committee, and we have truly led the way throughout this transition of the theory of the ALICE and the active shooter training. I know that when we first started doing this in 2012, we were the only school in, I believe, Northwest Ohio that was transitioning to the ALICE training. And those first few years, we were contacted by numerous local school districts and said, hey, can you help us? We shared hey, we have the training. We had videos at the time when it was brand new, and we were able to share those things, I believe, with Toledo Public Schools, Washington Local, Perrysburg, the Islamic Center. I know that our police, they do a lot of training at local hospitals as well. So I'm just very proud of the work that has been done over these past I guess it's been more than a few. I've been here for over 10 years now. But I'm also looking forward to working as the Director of Support Services and continue to grow as a district. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. That was great.
Thank you. Since there are no questions, I do want to say, ladies, thank you on behalf of not just our administrators and our families and our students, but this has been a journey. When you say 2012, this plan has been growing for 10 years, and it continues to grow. It is thorough, it is comprehensive, and what I like is it takes in all aspects, right? It takes in not just the active shooter piece, but the mental health and well-being of our students and staff, which is something that we've heard that our staff would like us to focus on. In addition to that, it's the crisis plan for unfortunate situations that may arise in our district, so we can be in the right place at the right time to support families and students with the right message and the right resources. So thank you for your presentation. Sylvania Schools has been doing, long before I was here, already on the path of doing great things and supporting our community and our families. So thank you so much. Very nice.
If I could chime in just real quick as well, and I won't take a lot of time, but I was an original member and continue to be a member since 2012, and I know they don't like the credit, but they've been involved, our Sylvania City and Township, as well as our fire department, our EMTs. Without a doubt, Officer Matuszewski, Officer Pack, who just left, I can call them at any time of the day, any day of the week, on a weekend with a security situation, with a question, and they've always gone above and beyond to answer my questions, to support any and all of us with keeping up to date and keeping our schools safe, which is our top priority moving forward, as well as it's been the last 10 or 12 years. So kudos to all of them. I know they don't like the credit. I see Officer Matuszewski staring me down right now a little bit like stop, but they've been outstanding, and we're really appreciative to have our partnership with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
May I continue?
Continue.
All right. Item 3.2, we have a transportation update for Sylvania Schools. Mr. Wolpert, thank you for being here tonight, as well as Ms. Nish. We appreciate your attendance as well.
Thanks. I know I wasn't scheduled to talk about safety and security, but I just want to reiterate how much we appreciate the cameras. I'm old enough to remember having to go into the VHS, is it VHS?
Yes.
The cameras and having to scroll through the entire bus ride to find something. Only to see that those old cameras were in the front and the back, not able to see. So these new cameras, you can search them. They're hung from the side ceiling area, so you can see what's in the seats. There's 4 cameras that covers every square inch of the seats. And there's one that faces outside, so you can see what's happening outside also. So, very useful. The last leg of that is to, and we're waiting for parts. They're not available, go figure. The last leg of that is to be able to download it from the bus to our offices. So currently we have to go out and pull the video, bring it inside, hook it up, find the video, send it to the administrator to support issues on the bus, and then take it back out and rehang it. So eventually it'll be very useful, save a lot of time, and I just appreciate that. That's a bright light for busing. It just makes life so much easier. So sorry about that. But so tonight we're talking transportation. Wanted to review some things that we've been working on this summer. Back in October, November, before my time, the board approved a upgrade in routing called TransFinder Plus. We did have TransFinder Pro. You would think the same name would be an easy transition, and it's been challenging. Found some, like all tech, found some things that didn't transfer. And then learning a whole new routing program. If we didn't have changes, it would still be challenging, just because it's a new program that we've used the same one for years. So hats off to my inner office crew. I know they have disliked me this summer sometimes because of my positive talk of it'll be all right. So along with that routing, we've cleaned up a lot of the routing. Deb Nish was responsible for using her 40 years of being involved in transportation to help clean up the routing so that we're in closer neighborhoods rather than going to different types of neighborhoods throughout the district. And that hasn't been cleaned up for, from what I hear, many years. So that's a part of our transition, that we want to do that every year so that it's just a small change. But thanks to Deb for taking care of that. That definitely was not an easy thing, along with a new program. So, but my inner office staff has been working on just making sure the routes are correct and inputting them into the new system if they didn't transfer. Along with those board approvals back in October, November, the board approved a Zonar system upgrade, which is a GPS for the buses, and it included Wayfinder and a pre-trip program. We launched the pre-trip program this summer with summer routing. It seemed to work okay. It's a learning curve. And Wayfinder, we have to wait. Wayfinder is a road-by-road direction program that coincides with the Route Finder program. So Route Finder has to be done, and then we throw it to Wayfinder. The good thing about Wayfinder is obviously a driver can't read the tablet while driving down the road, so it blackens itself out and speaks so that you can still hear the directions. More importantly, if we have to throw a driver another route that they're trained on, we can just slide it in our computer and it goes to their tablet in the bus so that they can look at the route, know what route they're doing. They can look at even the kids on the route, and it just eliminates that stress. Last year, we were faxing routes to schools for them to pick up after their school route, and then hopefully everything went through the email, fax, and then they get the routes. And then it's the surprise method, the written route. So that's going to be a huge thing for them to learn, but it'll benefit their routes with less stress, less chaos. And there's an attendance program on that. So once we get to using it, at every stop, we can use pictures or names of the kids at that stop will pop up, and you just press the attendance and move on. So that'll help keep track of who's on the bus. So if we ever get a call from a parent that wanted to make sure that their child got on the bus or want to make sure the child got off the bus, we would be able to have that information. So it's a huge safety feature. It's going to take a little bit of time to get all the drivers on board. There's some that are asking for it now, so they're excited, which is kind of neat because I didn't expect that. So that's good. Routing changes. Back in, I think it was April, we had a talk about a presentation about some routing changes. The goal was safe, consistent, reliable, and sustainable. That's going to be my goal every year. I feel it should be. We'll have other goals, but obviously safety is a main concern. Consistency and reliability, some may think that those are two of the same, but they're not really. And obviously sustainable, we don't want to have to go through staffing issues or huge routing changes every year. We want to be consistent so that parents, drivers, students know what we're doing year after year. I want to be called boring when it comes to that. I just, once we get it right, we don't want to change it very often. We'll just tweak it here and there. So some of the statistics that I brought up back in April, 7 to 9 drivers call off per day. Some have funerals, some long-term illnesses, some are just sick. Since February 23rd, 2022, that is the time that we installed a parent app. I started in March, but as part of our transition days, we started this full-time parent app. 52 route trips were canceled. 290 route trips were doubled or tripled. So that's a lot. That's more than I'm used to. And when I read that every time, I still get upset. It just bothers me. And I know it bothers all my staff. But what you have to take in consideration of those 52 routes, 290 route trips doubled. Every time that happens, it's inconsistency for the kids, it's inconsistency for the parents, adds chaos to the drivers. And anytime you add chaos to the drivers, it's unsafe. I don't like bringing up that word, but imagine having a driver and you say, we're putting 20 more kids on your route, then we're going to throw you a route sheet to kind of guess where those 20 kids go. Now we have great drivers, and some are like Deb that knows every road in the district, and that helps. But just think of the issues that could happen there. And we were blessed that we didn't have those issues. We had parents calling wanting to know where their child was, and just that alone is a problem. Again, we want to be reliable, we want to be consistent. We don't want to ever have to do that. So knowing all that, that's where I'm coming from when I propose changes. Again, change is difficult. It's difficult for my staff, it's difficult for the parents, it's difficult for the children. And even after the change, the first couple weeks are difficult, just because we have to get some sort of normalcy, a pattern. And so it's going to be a difficult first couple weeks. So a part of the changes, 1 to 2 tiers per school. If you remember what a tier is, it's basically an empty time slot that a driver can do an early route, and then if needed, driver can go back and do another route, a small route. So with that, the schools will be available to accept kids 30 minutes early and 30 minutes late, 30 minutes at dismissal, just to help with the tiers. Doing the tier system also eliminates the need to change the times. So if we use a tier, so if we fill an empty tier, those students are still getting home at the same time. around the expected time. Sometimes they're a little bit later, but it's just a different bus number. They're still home around their expected time, a schedule. Again, I'm a parent. I live off of schedules, doctor's appointments, sporting activities. So we don't want to interrupt those schedules, because sometimes when they're not home by a certain time, parents panic. And we don't want parents to panic. And with multiple changes, students panic. So we don't want students to panic either. So it becomes normal to have a separate tier. They're used to those times. Most CMPs will ride the AM high school bus. Now yesterday, I had all instead of most. We learned today that Bounty Collegium started a new school and changed their times. So they're now from 9 to 3, which doesn't fit in our time model. Now, in years past, maybe we would have talked about payment in lieu of. That's really not our plan. So they could actually ride on a middle school route, take a transfer bus to their schools. Same thing at night. So that's the model that I'm heading towards. Anytime you do that with the regular transportation, you're really cutting out the talk of payment in lieu of, because you're not paying for the entire bus route. So,
Jim, can you expand on that just a little bit? So say that again. So that one school changed their time?
yes,
Changed their
well,
start time?
actually 2 schools. They added a school, so there's now Bounty 2
Okay.
in a different location, and then they changed their time
And
to
they
9 to
changed their
3.
start time to 9 o'clock, so now we can bus those kids on junior high buses?
So those, if it works out with their time, we're trying to see if they would take their kids a little bit early, because we're in the area for other schools. But if it doesn't work out that way, to keep it within the half-hour law, yes, we'll transport them with the middle school buses, middle school AM buses, and take them to school after the middle school's done. Again, the plan is to transport. That should always be our first plan, is to transport. So-
I have a question. You found out like today that they added a new school?
Well, we heard back, they're required, I believe, in April to tell us. So they told us about a new school in April, but no one could get a hold of them till they actually called Deb today to learn the times, to see if there's actually anyone enrolled. And I mean, we could probably fight that and say, no, we're not doing that. But our goal is to transport, because why fight the fight? Our goal is to transport. So having the flexibility like that with our routes, having them go with our routes, enables us to be flexible with whatever comes up.
Is this school in the district?
No.
Where is the new location?
The new location is at, was it Nebraska and Byrne? And the original one, I believe, is downtown. Am I correct? Adams Street, yeah.
It is a president.
So again, there's always curveballs. There's always, we always need to have an extra plan with the model. It doesn't matter if you have 1 child or 500. If they hold on our buses, we can transport. If they hold on our regular ed buses, we can transport, then we just shuttle. And that's where we want to be consistent. There are schools that we didn't offer payment in lieu of for additional schools this year, but there are schools that currently get payment in lieu of. One is right on Bancroft Street. And I actually asked a question. I don't know if I stumped it or not, but there was a webinar, and I don't know if Mr. Palmer was available there, but I asked the question, how do you get out of payment in lieu of? Just because I'm a transportation person. My job is to haul people. So that's next year's discussion, is to how to get out of that payment in lieu of, because we paid 20 people to transport their own children to Bancroft Street. So it's...
Well, Jim, can I ask you, I know we want to transport. I think everybody here wants to transport everybody. But I think what we've been talking about since last October is our ability to transport. And
Correct.
if we don't have enough drivers, wouldn't more payment in lieu be the answer to the problem, or is it because it's Bancroft and we're driving right by it anyway? Is that where you're going with that?
Yeah, well, Bancroft is not very far away.
Well, right, it's in the district.
It's in the district, yeah, it was
Well,
close.
some of it.
Yeah. Actually, I believe this is right across the street from the district, but.
Okay.
But it's all in the theory or the master plan of it. So do we want to offer payment in lieu of to most schools? Do we want to leave it up to interpretation, or do we want to transport? So when you streamline things and include transportation in to the public school system, because we're going down those roads anyways, as long as they're, especially in high school buses, because high school buses are more about time than filling buses. If we wanted to fill high school buses with just high school students, they're going to be on the bus for an hour and 45 minutes, just because most high schoolers don't ride the bus. It would be even more difficult here because a lot of high schoolers sign up for transportation but don't use it. So it would be tough to judge who's going to ride the bus. So if we're going through the roads already and they fit on the buses, eventually, you know, the more CNPs we have, we may have to add a bus. But adding one bus for all those kids of roads that we currently go down for public school, it doesn't add any additional costs.
Right, but it adds another driver. I
Right.
thought that was the issue.
Yeah, the drivers are the issue, but with the current model, we don't have to add drivers. So we can use the drivers we have, increase flexibility, and still transport everyone that we need to transport.
I have a question about the routing for this year, but I don't want to jump ahead of your
Okay.
presentation, so I'll let.
All right. So in the PM, St. Joe's, Christ King, St. Benedict's will ride PM junior high buses, hoping to get to the junior highs before dismissal. There's a plan B available if that doesn't work. At dismissal, junior high traffic is kind of crazy. So the timing of all that is questionable. But again, there's plan B to enact if we have to. We hope to not have to do that. There'll be staffing at the junior highs and at the high schools in the morning. At the high schools in the morning, there will be, because we do have some bus drivers that used to do those CNPs that would do the entire route. Those drivers, for the time being, will sit there and wait. That way the three schools won't have to wait inside. When the bus comes up, they can go directly to their bus, and we can point out where the bus is. So hoping to that alleviates some anxiety there, and eventually, once they get used to everything, they'll know exactly what to do. So that's all with the CNPs. Walk zones were adjusted. Oh, go ahead.
So what is Plan B?
Plan B is to do the transfer of route. So at McCord, so if we're at McCord and traffic is so tough there that we can't get into McCord, we'll go to Southview, and those buses will come to us at Southview. But again, the goal is to time it out so that we're there before the traffic, before all the other buses are, so that we're the front bus, the CNP bus is the front bus, and then just trying to go.
I just want to make sure I understand, so that you're concerned about the buses leaving, let's just do St. Joe's, leaving St. Joe's to get to McCord on time for their dismissal.
Yeah, everything.
Or Harbor Hills or.
Yep. Right.
And are we going from St. Joe's to all three?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so we're gonna get to Arbor Hills or to, and hopefully they'll be getting out. And we won't just tell the Arbor Hills students or the Porter students just to stand by until the bus gets there? Why would we have to go to Plan B?
Well, again, we need to see if there's a problem in the first place. So if we're capable of holding the students for a minute, that's great. Again, it's tough to judge what traffic's like, whether or not let's say St. Joe's, is out at the time that they averaged last year. We don't know that yet. So, so those curveballs just happen. So that's where I say Plan B. But our goal is to do it at the junior highs, and we'll do everything we can at the junior highs. But McCord is notorious for parent traffic.
Right.
So
I have to go there every day.
there you go. So if we can't even get in there at that time, we may have to do it.
That's what I don't understand. If those buses are coming from St. Joe's and they're going to drop kids off, so there's already buses there waiting to take all the students to their home. Okay. So the buses that are doing the transfer, are we doing regular yellow buses, big buses? And will they have picked up, do they have other routes that they go on?
So, yes, they will have all routes, yes.
So they will then, at some point, take their own route, whether it's elementary or will they have a junior high route?
Most of them will have a small junior high route on a tier. And now, again, that's where we need flexibility because honestly, we don't know how many kids are going to ride. So we need that flexibility to decide where we're going to put those buses.
So one of the things that I guess I thought at some point we would get some kind of an outline plan. And maybe that was never, I'm just wondering if we're ever going to get some sort of document or a plan that shows, okay, these are the 70 routes we have. These are the routes that are, the elementary. I don't know, I just feel like I don't understand what the plan is. I get we're shuttling, but what I don't get is it saving us drivers? Is it saving us routes? Are we reducing our routes? And I guess I just don't, I looked at the spreadsheet with the stops and all that, and I still have some more questions about what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yep. Let me continue to see if I answer
Okay.
any of those. So walk zones were adjusted. The main walk zone that was adjusted was Southview, which was in my presentation. We had Southview as a walk zone across Sylvania. Southview as a walk zone is next to Southview on Sylvania. Even high schoolers, we don't feel it's the safest to cross the street on Sylvania, just because sometimes they don't follow the speed limit in Sylvania. So that's the main one. There's some minor adjustments elsewhere. One of them we reduced because they were crossing Whiteford with no cross guard. So again, safety was the main concern there. Following the walk zones is the big thing. We had walk zones that we still picked up kids. And so adhering to the walk zone will be a big change for us.
Real quick about the walk zone. We're still going to have a couple stops here and there in the walk zones, correct?
Around the walk zones.
Around the walk zones, yeah.
Yes.
So like, if a kid doesn't want to walk from Farmbrook to Southview, they could take the option of going to a specific spot.
Going to the southern part of Farmbrook.
Right. Not a bunch of stops, but like a couple.
Yeah. I believe there's maybe five back there. And there's some CNP children in Farmbrook we're picking up at those stops. So we're adhering to the elementary grade level for the stops for those high school buses because we're picking up certain CNPs. So CNPs will not have to go up the same as the high school. So we did make some accommodations there. Flexibility using former homes to CNP schools. This is where I hope to answer a couple of your questions. If you look at the resource scheduler in the back of your packet, yep, that is what we look at every day. Disregard the date; it's not the most up-to-date one, but I thought I'd throw it in there just to start explaining how routing works and how flexibility opens up when we do things like this. Everything in yellow, that's an open route that we can fill if needed. Doesn't mean they're contracted for that. It's just an open route that they're typically available to fill. You look at the AM route at 615 and move down to where it says St. Joseph's or Christ the King. You'll see some drivers that are scheduled until 8 o'clock, and they have nothing else until an elementary run or a silver run. When you take out that bus at that equation,
Are you talking about like bus 28?
yeah, bus 28 will actually be a shuttle bus, so he'll actually be at the high school at Northview and leave at 7:25. He'll be there 10 till 7. So he would be available to ride a Northview route and be back well enough time to sit there and wait for the kids to come. So when you talk about saving buses, you may not be able to save an entire bus because some of those routes do an elementary run. Some of them don't. And that's where we kind of piece the puzzle together after we know ridership to look at how we can save a driver or increase that flexibility. It's not all about saving drivers here. We also want to be flexible in case our pool of 7 unassigned subs and all the other subs, in case we're using all of them. We still want that flexibility to be able to use regular drivers in the tiers and any availability to cover those routes. If not, we're canceling. And again, I never want to get there again. So, is it redundant? Yes. Is it somewhat not using full efficiency of the drivers? Yeah. But again, we want it to be sustainable. We want to be able to do this every day for the next 10 years. Did you have a question?
Yes, this is great. This does give me a visual. So when you say, for instance, going to bus 28, when you're saying he's available, so does that mean you'll plug him in if there's no driver for one of these highlighted routes that day, whether that's where you're going to plug the subs in?
Correct.
So if there's no sub for that day, you can take him and plug him in.
Yes. It increases flexibility. Now, every time we lose a driver, we'll look at, can we lose that driver? Can we still be sustainable? And maybe piece together some routes. If you look at, I think maybe 57, 58, you'll see one of them has a high school, junior high route. One of them, after eliminated a St. Joe's Christ the King, only has the elementary route. That's an example of where we may be able, depending on ridership, we may be able to combine those and eliminate a driver. Does that make sense?
So 57, it says open. What is that? There's no driver assigned?
That's currently no drivers. I'll get to that also. Yeah.
Okay.
So the open routes, we either lost the driver, or we had some open routes last year. They're just not a driver assigned. And we're not assigning some of those right now because we want to see what ridership is, so that we can look at overall whether or not we need that driver.
So on bus 57, where it says open, and it says 615A St. Joseph, what does that mean?
That means last year they did a St. Joseph route, picked up at their homes, and then drove to St. Joe's.
These were last year.
Some of them are last year, some of them have, like bus 1, she retired, so it's got the new driver. So that's a working copy again. It's just for reference. That's the last thing we'll do. No, it's a combination. Because we started taking some of them out that left. We reduced some already. Like bus 1 was Gloria Dixon. She had all St. Joe's. That's done. So we're not replacing that. So again, it's just a reference to show the routing system. Again, we use that every day to plug in the openings. So I just thought it's difficult for everyone to know the entire routing picture without actually seeing all those buses. So
No, yeah, I appreciate that. That's where I was struggling. I was trying to picture some of this, and I still don't understand a lot of this, but at least I can kind of visualize some of it.
right, yeah, it's difficult, and we've done it for a while. I'm still new to the Sylvania district, but these practices, the combining on the non-publics with publics, the tiers, I've done it before with K through 12. I had K through 12 transportation because it worked where I came from. But it's nothing new. It's actually in a handbook by Lee that gives some suggestions on what we can do. Again, I installed redundancy because I never want to get back to where we are, and that's my goal. That's just where I'm at. I'll be fully truthful with that. It's just I never want to get back there. It's chaos. It's dangerous. It's just in my head. There's so many things that could go wrong, and I can't control that.
I have another question about this. So I just make sure I understand. So this is, I think, for last year, but this says bus 57 and 615 went to St. Joe's. So they would go do a St. Joe's route, take those kids to St. Joe's.
Yes.
And then it says 7 o'clock St. Benedict. Same thing, if we go back.
Well, no, they brought St. Benedict in with St. Joe's.
So they picked up all those kids, went to St. Joe's, dropped them off,
And then went to St. Benedict's. Yep.
And then it says 8:30 MA. What's MA?
Maybe.
What's that? Oh, maybe. Okay. So then it would go pick up kids and go make it. Okay.
Yeah, so in that current model, if that driver didn't do a shuttle, again, we don't know how many kids are going to ride. So we're prepared for 2 buses of each Southview, Northview, just in case. So if that bus didn't have a shuttle, that bus would be available all the way up to Maple. So it increases flexibility on plugging in people wherever we need to.
Can we get this like updated to like where we're at today?
We're not there yet, but yeah,
When do you think we'll do that?
Wednesday.
Wednesday? Can we get this on Wednesday when we're there?
I hope so.
No, this is great. This is very.
And that's the last thing we do because.
Is this your living, breathing Excel spreadsheet that you use for routing?
Yes.
This is
No. That's used for call-offs. It's a resource schedule. Routing is a whole
Every
different monster.
slot has to be filled in.
Right.
Every single day, every one of these little slots have to be covered.
So that's when you plug people.
And when they
Yes.
start calling off and you start trying to fill with somebody else, it takes hours to make sure that these kids get home the safest way we can.
Here's the question. What? We couldn't hear the question. What was the?
She was just saying this, the answer that she gave was that this, I asked if the document was a living, breathing routing, and it's not routing. Routing is done in the routing software.
Correct.
This is a list of key routes, and this is for staffing. So every day, they start the day and have to have names in every one of these, well, this is for drivers, drivers.
Correct.
That's the answer she gave.
And then if you can't fill the name, then you got to start figuring out how to combine routes.
How to tier it, fill an empty tier. Okay. Again, that provides flexibility. Some statistics. Last year, we had 68 routes, 67 drivers. This year, we're at 64 routes with 61 drivers. We lost some drivers, some retired, some decided to leave, which happens every year. Again, it's preparing for that. So the way we're preparing is through routing. Again, we have some open slots that we're not going to fill. We're going to consider ridership after school starts, just because that's the responsible thing to do. And with applicants and new hires, we have 7 ready. We had 3 substitutes last year, uncontracted. And 1 actually, Andrea Gear, she just passed her test today. She was an aide. So we celebrated a little bit today because we have someone that passed the test. So we have 4 drivers. We had 1 return. So 4 drivers, 1 new one that are ready day 1. We have 1 that's very close. She drove in Michigan, so she has to go to class. Drove for 10 years in Michigan. Decided to move to Sylvania. So she wants to be a bus driver, which is very good. And then we have 3 ready for class. I don't know if you know that they have to do a classroom portion that's 15 hours, and then they have to drive with an on-bus instructor for at least 12. No one drives for 12 hours. I came in, and when I first started driving, I had truck driving experience for 10 years. Since out of high school, I've driven something with the CDL, and it took me more than 12 hours. So I thought I was good. So it is a timely process. Usually takes 5 to 6 weeks to have someone fully ready.
So those three that are ready for class will be 5 or 6 weeks before they're.
Hopefully.
So the 64 routes you talked about, those aren't represented on this.
If you count those, it's
If I
6 hours.
count- So, but some of them are the routes you're not going to fill on purpose,
And
right?
we don't know yet. We don't know that yet.
Well,
Depending
no,
on
but you're not
ridership.
going to fill
Correct, yes.
like bus,
Yes.
whatever the old
Yeah,
bus was
they're-
that picked up St. Joe's.
Correct. There's 61 of them assigned
Okay.
right now.
So the 7 that are ready, are those included in the 61 drivers?
No.
So we have 61 drivers plus
Correct.
potentially 7 more.
Yep. What you have to remember, average 7 to 9 call-offs a day.
Right.
And not everyone stays. Several retirees that are due to retire. So we're going to continue to recruit.
So
We're not going to stop. We want to.
Right. But let's just say we average 7 a day. So let's just say those 7 are taken up by the absences a day. So realistically, right now as we stand, we have 61 drivers for 64 routes.
Correct.
So today we're 3 drivers short.
Yes.
Right, but that, I mean, we're not filling those.
Right.
We're
No, I
not
get that.
filling-
I just want to make sure that I understand.
We still have coverage. We're not canceling.
Right.
So
And the
we still have
coverage
coverage.
from the tiers and all the
Correct.
things we're doing, we're able to
Yes.
cover those. Right.
Yep.
Next agenda, it looks like two full-time bus driver resignations, one full-time, or one substitute resignation, one transferring to custodian, one more going on unpaid leave, and then I see one full-time being hired and one substitute being hired. So as I count that, puts us down 3-ish. How is that reflected in these numbers?
Those 2 resignations are included in this.
Okay.
That I believe that was 57, 58.
All right.
So those are included.
What about the transfer and the unpaid leave?
The transfer is not because it's not, her 10 days are up, I believe,
Okay.
Thursday. So that is not
So
included in there.
That's going to go down another one? then?
Correct.
Okay.
But again, if you look, she did I believe she didn't do an elementary, which is the big one. So we may look at dissolving that. Again, it all depends on ridership. If you know anything about ridership, it's good to press the button that says you're going to ride the school bus. It's a little different getting in high school or on the school bus. So, because high schoolers don't like to ride the school bus. So we don't know what the ridership is going to be. So we're going to wait until we have some sense of what that ridership is. But it's good to have that flexibility so that we can cover until that.
Are the one additional driver and one additional substitute that are on tonight's agenda included in the 7?
I believe the one additional driver is. The additional substitute, sorry, I don't have to forward you.
How many substitutes do we have now?
Right now we have
Just ballpark.
We have 5.
All right, okay.
yeah, we'll have 7 ready. So as substitutes, some of those want to be contracted substitutes, okay, unassigned. That's why I'm confused, because if you remember back in
Yeah.
April, we wanted to have a bank of 7 contracted unassigned drivers. So we're not going to call them substitutes, they're going to be contracted. But they're going to be available to plug in anywhere we want.
So are the contracted unassigned drivers included in the 61?
No. Those, because we haven't done that yet, and we're not going to do that until we know what we're doing with the routes, because we don't know if we're going to need some of those to do a route, an assigned route. So it's all a waiting game right now until we know ridership and make the decision on whether or not we're going to produce from.
When we see someone on the agenda that's a substitute, that's not a contracted unassigned, that's an
Correct.
actual substitute.
That's a substitute, or maybe a substitute in training.
Okay. So if it's a contracted unassigned, it will show up on the agenda
As
as
a
just a
contract.
bus driver.
Yep. Correct.
And the difference is, just to make sure I understand, the difference is a substitute that's on our list, we can call up and say, hey, will you drive a route today? And they can say no.
Correct.
The contracted unassigned, they come to the building every day and wait to be put in something.
Actually, yeah, kind of the same. The uncontracted substitutes, they usually still show up every day. They just get substitute pay, and they don't get insurance. If you remember our discussions before, we felt that the insurance is a big lure for someone to make a wage just being a substitute. So and that being 8 hours a day, well, we can't fill 8 hours a day for everyone in busing, but we have learned that having that health insurance is huge, and that's something that I feel is working. And once we continue to get it out there, maybe improve some culture and kind of show that it's not all bad news in busing, that I think it'll grow even, because there's a chance for them to have a career that they can sustain.
Are the new drivers, I mean, is that something that they're citing as the reason why they're choosing to join us in health insurance?
Right. That's always a big talk. Any other questions?
Yes, I do. So one of the things we talked about from the beginning was this concern, and we've heard this from other parents, and how long kids are going to be on the bus. So as I look at the spreadsheet of the stops, and I understand that that spreadsheet that's on our agenda is just, this is where our buses are stopping. I can't look at that spreadsheet and tell if it's a junior high stop or an elementary stop or a non-public or a public. It's just a stop.
Correct.
Okay. And those could be pool stops, or they probably are stops with multiple. I can't tell how many kids are picking up. That's just where, and that's by statute that we have to approve that.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm looking at this and I see, for instance, that a school bus goes to Swiss Air Apartments at 6:23 in the morning. Now, assuming that there's a kindergartner, first, second, third, whatever, in that apartment complex that goes to St. Joe's or to St. Benedict, they're getting picked up at 6:23, and they're gonna get dropped. St. Joe starts at 7:55.
We'll drop it at 7:30.
So you're gonna drop at 7:30.
That's what we did last
So
year.
that's what, is that consistent with what was done last year also?
At 7:30, yes.
Okay, but
The leave time for those St. Joe's buses
The pickup
varied.
time.
Yeah, it varied. Again, I can't tell you specific people what they did last year, what they did this year, and with respect, I don't believe if I gave you those times, unless I give you all of last year's route, I don't think you all will know. So in that case, it does follow the guidelines of the routes we run. So if you look at pickup time to their transfer portion, that's the same route that we run.
And I understand
So-
that, and last year,
I think, is there a way to tell us what time Swiss Air was picked up last year?
well, I
Is there a way to tell us how long are these kids out of us? That's ultimately
And I
what we
don't-
want to go, right?
you and I have had conversations where, and I understand that some of the non-public kids that went out of district, they were on the bus for an hour, and I get that.
So
But I'm
in some
talking
cases,
about-
hour and a half, hour.
And I get that, but and this is where, so Swiss Air Village is, you could almost throw a rock to St. Joe's. So, and we're gonna pay kindergartner on a bus for an hour, it just, as we've looked at this plan, are we looking at those individual situations, and are we lengthening the time drastically? Because now, and I get we did these routes last year, but now we're putting K through 5, K through 8 on them. And more so I'm worried about K through 5. We're putting K through 5 on these buses. And I get it's a start time issue, and I get the logistics. I'm just wondering if we looked at how much longer these little ones are going to be on the bus.
Yeah. I haven't looked at each individual specific house or pickup, only because I look at it globally. Because even if it's right behind St. Joe's, that could have been the first pickup last year. Because, I mean, obviously we have to do a big circle on where we're going. So, and determining that becomes a whole big puzzle. And if I held the people that live right behind St. Joe's to that higher standard where they get the first pickup, everyone else would be upset.
I
So-
understand logistically, so essentially what you're saying is that this is the system that gives us flexibility, and to the extent a K through 5 kiddo is gonna be on a, and you concede to the fact that there may be a K through 5 kiddo in that Swiss Air Village that is going to be on a bus for an hour and
Right.
10 minutes to get to St. Joe's.
It's possible, yes. It's not hopeful. And some of those times may be adjusted, again, depending on ridership. If we have 100 extra CMPs that signed up that aren't going to get transportation tomorrow, times will drastically change. So if we have 100 high schoolers that don't take transportation, the times will change. So it's all a work in progress that takes a long time. And that's stuff that we'll look at on how to improve. We don't want drivers showing up 20 minutes early to the high schools. So that's something that we adjust. We adjust that for everyone.
And by state law, I don't think we can drop off. It has to be, there's a 30-minute.
Within half hour, yes.
So we have this list of all the times and stops. Is there a way to tell us which one of these stops has non-public school children? Because that's one thing I'd like to do is I'd like to compare just a couple, like maybe one stop in St. Joe's, one stop in Swiss Air, one stop out west, one stop up north, and just kind of compare last year to this year. But I can't do that with what we have because I don't know what stops.
Yeah,
pick up.
what you have just complies to the law.
No, I get that.
Is
But
it possible?
I'm asking,
Yes.
is there a way to give us a spreadsheet like this that also includes, okay, this 622 stop at Chelsea Place Apartments has a CMP channel. Is there a way to?
Do you want CMP or do you want just St. Joe's St. Benedict's?
I'd like to see, all the
yes.
elementary kids that we're picking up. Is there a way to give us that?
For all of those CMPs,
At least a sampling. Like,
I can give you a sampling, yes. It's difficult because those times change. Usually within the first 3 weeks.
No.
So
I understand
it's
it's
difficult.
going to change. I get it's going to
Okay.
change. We're going to modify as we go. I get that. But
I just don't want to be held harmless.
No,
on
no,
something that
so I'm not holding you
changes.
harmless.
That's-
I understand it's going to change, but at this point in time, I guess where we're at today, I'd like to see.
You just want an example.
It might change. I get it. But
Well, it's definitely gonna change. I mean,
Right.
everything changes
Yeah.
over the first, month or so of
Correct.
transportation.
right,
Like-
but I don't want to wait until a month into school to look at it. Like see where we're at
Right, but
today.
what you're gonna look at today is not necessarily what it's gonna be.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I think that's what he's trying to say. I think
Yeah.
he's panicking about what you're asking him.
I'm not going to hold you to it.
Now,
Yeah.
some parents or kids, he's panicking.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's and it's ever changing, and that's where the flexibility comes in. We want to be prepared for everything. Again, we want to not create a whole lot of anxiety with the kids. Try to prepare them because we want that with our kindergartners. We want that with everyone. And once they learn the system, you'd be amazed what they can do. It's just being consistent with the system so that they know what to expect. And so that's huge. That's just something that we need to focus on.
And I 100% agree with you. I get where you're coming from. And I understand we have to make changes, I really do. And I guess where I'm coming from is as a parent, really. I mean, logistically, this idea of putting the littles on a bus that, and I know to a certain extent we're hampered by the start times. I get that. But we're talking a lot of time, and that concerns me. And I also feel like we have to at least realistically draw some distinction. We keep saying CMPs. Well, a parent here in Sylvania may choose to send their kid to Maumee Valley Country Day. And look, that's far away. I get it. Or they may go to Central Catholic way downtown or whatever. But we're talking about there's at least 2 or 3 CMPs right here in the heart of our district between St. Joe's and is Emmanuel Christian in our district?
That's the one that's right across the road.
Oh, okay.
Wait, no. I'm sorry. Again, I'm new. That's, no. I believe that's in our district, yes.
You're talking about the site next door.
There you go.
which is
Yeah.
on
Yes. Sorry.
So, I think that just, my concern as a board member sitting here is that I feel like we have to at least acknowledge that we have these schools right inside of our district. And I always say, does it make sense? And it just doesn't seem to make sense from where I'm sitting, and it may make sense to you,
Right.
why we would take a first grader from Swiss Air Village all around the world again and back to St. Joe's. And listen, my kids don't ride a bus because I chose a grandfather. So I get it. We all make choices as parents.
Right.
But that's just my concern as a board member is if there's a way to look at some of these actual real time, how long are our kids? And I say our kids because I think as a board we're responsible for all kids in Savannah, whether they go to St. Joe's or wherever. Because it's our duty by law to get them to school. And you feel that way. You and I talked about this. You feel very strongly about getting kids to school and not paying that new, and I understand that. It's just the time. At some point, does the time for the kids on the bus outweigh the benefit it's giving us? And I don't know what that answer is. And I appreciate the challenge that you have, because I can't imagine this. You and Dad are wizards.
Yeah,
at what you do.
it's definitely not an easy challenge. One thing about that, and I understand the schools in district, in transportation, the standard is we treat all schools, all of our kids the same. It's the drive time once you leave that transfer point that matters. That adds to that time. So everyone, all now 15 CMPs have the same standard as the ones that live in district, the ones that go out of district. The only thing that adds to their time is the location of where they go to school. So being consistent with that eliminates some issues. And it doesn't show favoritism. So that's where we're consistent. Now, given that expectation, there are opportunities for those, for instance, Toledo Christian. A lot of those parents bring them to Southview because they feel it's too early, and then they just catch a shuttle.
So is that an option?
Yes, that's an option for everyone.
To just bring them to the shuttles?
Yeah, if they have to work, it works out in their time that they're just dropping them off at that school.
And the buses leave the shuttle schools in the morning 7:30-ish, 7:20-ish?
7:25.
7:25.
7:25.
So yeah, they're there.
So-
I think
so-
from 7:45 to 7:25, 7:50 to 7:25.
So if there's a non-public that's supposed to get picked up at 6:20, they could choose to take their kid to Southview at 7:10 or
Correct.
7:15 on the bus.
Yes, we would like to know about it when that happens so that we can expect it. But yes, I can do that.
I would also like to add, if I understand correctly, Jim, that on Wednesday, we will have drivers that actually practice the routes in real time to make sure that if there's areas that we can abbreviate or areas that need a little more time, we can also make authentic adjustments, pretending you may be picking up 8 kids here or 5 kids there, but really getting bus driver input for the folks that are going to be on the road, driving the bus, making the stops, to kind of fine tune where we are as well. Is that correct?
Correct. They'll actually come in and do some of that tomorrow. We have a 4-hour in-service, and we're allotting some time for them to review the routes. They're masters at what they do also, so most of them can do it in their head, but we want them to go out and drive it. They get their bus out rolling. I don't know if you ever had a car parked for a summer, but they need to be rolling so that we're sure that they don't need any maintenance. And then they'll also have the opportunity Wednesday morning to do the same. And then we'll have opportunity to make some quick changes if needed. And then we'll push out all the data Wednesday night. So along with that, I don't know if this has happened in the distant past, but drivers are coming to open houses this year at the elementary. Something that I feel will benefit the driver and students. To where kindergarten students, we have a handicapped student that parent parents worry about even getting on the lift. So we're gonna have a handicap bus there so that they can practice. Little kindergartners with an electric wheelchair. Could you imagine? But he's going to be able to get himself onto that lift so that we can raise him up in handicap. So again, it's not that they haven't done this in the past, but we're going to over promote taking care of kids, taking care of our kids with the drivers. Have some fun activities for the drivers to be out in public. So hopefully that resounds in the public and they can see that our department is worth working for.
And I just want to reiterate, you stated that, and I think Ms. Hoffman said the same thing, that even though we may push out routes and we have a list and a combination, I know here in Sylvania schools, we are still registering children. As Ms. McDonald said, the department's pretty busy on the first floor. So we do know that routes, even though they may be pushed out, those times are subject to change based on enrollments, withdrawals, and in addition to ridership, which we won't know until the first couple of weeks of school, maybe 3 weeks of school.
Correct. Any other questions?
Good. Thank you, Mr. Holbrook. Thank you, Ms. Nish. We appreciate your time tonight and your detailed presentation.
So we are at our first opportunity for public participation for agenda items. So, assuming these are all comments on the transportation, just remind everyone, we do have a 3-minute time limit. So just in the interest of time and to be fair to everybody, I'm gonna stick pretty close to the 3 minutes. So as you start getting close, I kind of wave my hand just to let you know that you got a few seconds to wrap up. So first on the list is Paul Dwyer. State your name and address for the record.
Paul Dwyer, 5903 Summer Place Drive.
Go ahead.
Alright, so, I'd like to start off with some questions. So, is this driver shortage a temporary problem or a permanent problem? I believe it is a temporary problem. So why is a permanent change to private school busing being proposed? Is the private school busing the cause of Sylvania's busing problem? If not, why is it the solution to that problem? This proposal was written when a loss of drivers was forecasted. Now, from what we're hearing, it sounds like there are actually more bus drivers available than there were in the past. So why is the proposal still moving forward when there are more bus drivers this year than last year? Does the district believe that this solution is just as safe for these children? Children will be more vulnerable, both on the bus and during transfer. They'll be in the dark, moving between the buses and the parking lot. Far more children will need to be monitored than there are today for the other CMPs. There will be greater than 1 hour bus rides to school for students as young as kindergarten to travel a few miles. Is this a mild inconvenience? Small children may need bathroom breaks during this time, perhaps at the transfer. What is the plan for that? Just because the transfer approach has been implemented in the past with other schools or districts does not make it right. What about the decades and decades and decades of past precedents in Sylvania? Why now? I would like to remind the district of, which it sounds like it's been brought up a few times, about the 30-minute time limit. The middle schoolers for the public schools will be waiting for the non-public children to be dismissed, board their buses, and arrive at the middle schools to complete transfers for their leave. That will take time to occur and could delay the public middle schoolers at least 20 to 30 minutes. What are some of the other causes of this problem? Partially, redistricting years ago that created some inefficient bus routes. Rules and changes that potentially cause drivers to get fed up or quit and retire early. And there's no doubt that this proposal will make the situation a little bit more difficult for some of the drivers. I'd like to highlight an excerpt from the letter that was sent from Sylvania schools to private school families and faculty. It says, saving only one bus will create a significant burden on our Sylvania families. Are private school families not considered Sylvania families? It's okay to place a significant burden on these families? Where did this sudden and significant burden come from? The end result will be to make the busing situation for private schools or painful, so that private school families will be forced to find alternative transportation. Once the ridership is reduced, this may be used as justification to further reduce services, as a concern of ours. Private school families live in the district, pay income and property tax in the district, vote for school levies in the district. In other words, private school families are just as much a part of Sylvania as public school families. This proposal is untenable. I'm a Sylvania resident. I grew up in Sylvania. I went to Maplewood, Highland, McCord, and Northview. My extended family lives in Sylvania. I have a niece and a nephew in Sylvania schools. I've been a long-term supporter. And I'm just surprised by the attitude towards and treatment of these Sylvania families. Please vote no. Thank you.
Good evening, Brett Seymour, 2358 Williston Green Road, Toledo, Ohio, 43617. I've been here a bunch of times. You all know me. Transportation is about equality. You say Sylvania families, but you talk about how you're bringing on board us, St. Joe's, Christ the King, and St. Benedict's, the same way you treat your other CNPs. But it's not how you treat your public school kids. You asked about route times. So in that list you have 219 pages. The routes on my street for my kids and for the public school kids, they average 119 minutes for my kid. The public school kids from the middle school and elementary school, they average 53. That's both directions. 119 minutes from the pickup to the start time and from the leave time to the get home time. Best case scenario. Yours is 53 minutes. You created the us and them. Not me. You did. All of you and your predecessors and the administration are the ones that created it. Mr. Palmer, respectfully, the drivers from Uber and Lyft, they aren't CDLs. They don't drive buses. This was an exercise to try and appease some people in the community. You take double the funding for our riders. You take $2,115.76 for every one of our riders. You take $1,057.88 for each public school rider. And you want to treat us differently. That's not equality. It's shameful. It's embarrassing. I came here politely the last 3 months and worked with you. I'm done being polite. You haven't been polite to us. You haven't been polite to our kids. You want to treat our kids different than yours. You created the inequality, not me. So the us versus them, all I want is the same. I don't want more. I don't want less. I want the same. I don't want my kid to be segregated to the front of the bus, which has been suggested. Segregation ended in this country a long time ago. We're not segregating non-public school kids from public school kids. They're kids. It's ridiculous to suggest that we segregate them. But you have. In public meetings, in private meetings. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for my community. Mr. Wolpert, Dr. Motley acknowledged the inequality. He acknowledges in an email, we have in public records request. Dr. Motley's acknowledged it in the newspaper, on the TV, in every one of these meetings where she spoke. You acknowledge that you're treating us different than the public school kids. You created the us versus them. It's time you vote no and undo the injustice.
Brian, I'm sorry, I'm gonna mess this up. I'm not even trying to say your last name. How do you pronounce your last name?
Augustinian.
Okay, Augustinian. Let's take your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Brad Augustiniak, 2836 Maple Colony, Toledo, Ohio, 43617. So we've obviously heard a lot about this, over the last few months. I think we were led to believe that private school families, that this was going to be worked out, and obviously it's not. I'm actually a little more confused, I think, after coming to this meeting than I was before. We were under the impression that it was because there weren't enough bus drivers. Now we're being told that there is enough bus drivers. there may be a plan B, there may not be a plan B, but I guess at the end of the day, I think the most important thing to us, like the previous two gentlemen had said, is longer bus rides and transferring. That doesn't seem fair. Why? It does, honestly, to most of us, feel like we're being penalized for riding the bus and just wanting the same things that the other kids have. It just doesn't seem right. So, like I said, I think we, as they said, we pay taxes, we vote, and all the same things, and we just want to be treated the same. I guess that's what it all comes down to. It doesn't seem fair that our kids should have to be on the bus longer or transfer if the other kids don't have to do that, as I understand it so far. So that was just what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Troy McIntosh.
Good evening. My name is Troy McIntosh, 64 Kennebec Place East, Westerville, Ohio. So I'm not a resident of the district, but I come tonight as the executive director of the Ohio Christian Education Network, along with Assistant Director and Attorney Corinne Vidalis. We represent about 130 member schools throughout the state, including each of the members of the Toledo Diocese. So that includes St. Benedict, St. Joseph, and Christ the King. And we are coming here to advocate for those schools, and particularly the students of those schools, for the same reason that previous speakers have mentioned. We believe that there is an inequitable treatment of the students who attend those schools and live in Sylvania School District. So I just want to point out a couple things. The first is we've already had references to longer ride times for students. We have transfers for students that attend these schools, some of which are long enough that the school district has indicated they need to hire additional supervision to watch those students during that time. You have younger students riding with older students, which we would argue is not exactly the best policy in place. Bottom line is, though, that there is a responsibility on the part of the school district to treat private school students who live in Sylvania City School District with the same standard and treatment as those who attend Sylvania City schools. And I'll refer to a letter that we have a copy of to provide each of you from the State Superintendent of Ohio dated July 8th, 2020, in which he writes to each school district superintendent in the state: traditional public schools are legally responsible for the transportation of not only their own students, but eligible students who reside in the district and who attend community schools and chartered non-public schools. In bold, he writes this next sentence, in bold: nothing in state law allows a school district to prioritize the needs of its own students over the needs of community schools or chartered non-public school students. That is the crux of the issue that we are more than willing to work with you to find solutions for. But right now, we do not believe that the standard that the state superintendent has issued in accordance with Ohio Revised Code and Administrative Code is being followed in Sylvania schools in regards to its treatment of those students who attend non-public schools and live in your district. So bottom line is, we are more than willing to work with you to find solutions, but we do want to carry the message to you that it is incumbent on the district to find a solution so that those students who attend St. Joseph, St. Benedict, Christ the King, or any other CNPs in your district do not bear the brunt of the transportation crisis that every district is dealing with. So we recognize there's an issue with transportation, drivers, and so forth. We just want to make sure students attending charter non-publics are not bearing the brunt of that issue. Thank you.
Amelia Sweich. Is that right?
or over and out. We should be able to go straight to our own school. I don't think it's safe for little kids like me to be on the same bus as bigger kids and have to switch buses in a parking lot. I am afraid we will be picked on for being little or for wearing our school uniforms. I am worried that my little sister who is going into kindergarten will be scared or get lost. Adults are supposed to make sure that kids are safe. This new bus plan is scary for me and does not make me feel safe.
I'm the next name on your list. My name is Jennifer Sweech. I also live at 6005 Indian Trail in Sylvania with my husband, our 3 children who attend St. Joe's. I appreciate the opportunity to address you once again today and hope that you would reject the proposed busing plan. I previously voiced my concerns regarding the safety and legality of the busing plan during the June meeting, and I continue to have those same concerns. The letter sent to St. Joe's parents on July 29th from Dr. Motley was not surprising. Our concerns have not been taken seriously, and unfortunately, this is nothing new for this administration. Our children previously attended Sylvania schools. We made the decision to unenroll them just prior to the start of the 2020 school year when Sylvania schools pivoted multiple times in the weeks leading up to school, unable to make a decision on in-person school and disregarding the concerns voiced by hundreds of parents at that time as well. Looking back, it was the best decision we made for our children. Thankfully, the only thing we have to rely on Sylvania schools for is busing, but now the lack of planning, once again, and leadership is affecting that. We all pay taxes, a lot of them, and for that, all we expect is that we are legally entitled to, which is equal busing, especially when we are very clearly similarly situated in our schools within district boundaries. Dr. Motley's letter indicated that pickup times would begin at 6:20 and drop-offs would likely be at 3:30, which is 30 minutes faster than last year. This is confusing. If it will take 1 hour and 40 minutes to get students to school in the morning, how will the buses be able to complete drop-off in just 50 minutes in the afternoon? This plan will realistically have students on the bus for approximately 3.5 hours a day. I doubt any of us as grown adults would accept any job offer that required a 3.5 hour commute. I certainly wouldn't, and I wouldn't expect my kids to do that either. Another concern I have is for students with disabilities and medication needs and the effect that that will have on their education. One of our children has ADHD and takes medication daily. It took us almost an entire school year to find the right medication and dosage just so he's able to focus and learn just like other kids. With this change, we will be back at square one and needing to find an alternative medication because his will not last throughout the school day with the excessively long bus commute. His pediatrician is very concerned because we were lucky enough to find something that worked for him, and that's not normal. In the July board meeting, Dr. Motley indicated that allowing private schools to handle their own busing was an option. How long has the administration known about the driver shortage? Why did the administration wait until 1 month before the start of the school year to even consider alternatives? This administration clearly lacks leadership, planning, and has consistently taken the easy way out of every problem. The administration thought that the easy decision here was to solve the problem by affecting a small handful of non-public students and their families, and assume that we won't get upset or that we'll be upset and eventually get over it. I can assure you that this seemingly easy decision will not be resolved easily if this board approves the busing plan. Be prepared for a fight because we believe in protecting the safety of our children and standing up for what they're legally entitled to. Thank you.
Kari Tab.
Carrie Tan, 7516 Rymore Court, Sylvania, Ohio. I really honestly wasn't planning on saying anything today, but I do think that you guys need to take into consideration not every child has an hour to ride the bus. I have a kid that gets up at the crack of dawn and does treatments and therapies to stay alive, and I don't have that extra time in the morning. If she had to get on the bus at 7:20, she'd be up at 4 o'clock. What kid can get up at 4 o'clock? She's 9. can't keep things the way they've been running. She falls asleep at school as it is. What am I supposed to do? I don't understand. I wrote emails. I've not gotten any response. Can somebody please tell me what my kid's supposed to do? She's supposed to get up at 4 o'clock, be on the bus by 6:20. She'll be sleeping by 9. How is she going to learn anything? Just to stay up, so she can stay healthy, stay out of the hospital. Not to mention the urgent bathroom needs she has when she's on a bus for an hour and 20 minutes. I'm sorry that I'm upset. I didn't intend to say anything today. But I really wish that you would reconsider the bus situation. I don't know.
Thank you. Allison Ranger?
My name is Allison Granger. I live at 4603 Northbrook Drive, 43623. So thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. I didn't plan a whole lot, but I wanted to urge you to vote no on this proposal. Even more passionate about it now after hearing the plan tonight, because there seems to be not really a clear-cut plan. School starts next week, and we don't know the routes yet. We don't know the plan. They haven't been practiced. To me, it's just a recipe for disaster. And to expect 5-year-olds to sit on a bus with high schoolers and then go through this transfer process without a real crystal clear plan in place, it's so stressful. I did a transfer when I was in college, when I had an internship in Mexico. I was lost. I didn't make it to work that day. It was a disaster. And I just feel like that level of stress is what our kids will be facing. They don't know these kids. They don't know the situation. It doesn't sound like the administration really knows what's going on. It's nonsensical to me. We have to think of different solutions. We have to think outside of the box. And if we don't know how many people are gonna ride, even though we all had to sign up for it, it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts and it's very dynamic. Maybe we think differently about how that piece of it works. Is there not an app maybe we can look at where parents and students can communicate if they're riding the bus or not, so that they can better plan for these bus routes? I just feel like this is not the right solution. There's just too many unanswered questions with this. So I just urge you to look for other solutions. Reach out to other school districts beyond Ohio. We don't have to just keep doing what other people have been doing. It's not the right solution. So I strongly urge you to vote against it tonight. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Okay, that's everybody that was on the list. All right, our next agenda item, Adam, over to you.
All right, treasurer's items for the month. This isn't my normal meeting to have all the treasurer's reports and things like that, but I do have 3 items tonight in offer and consent. Termination benefits fund. We did approve this appropriation at the end of June. This finalizes the whole process to start this fund that will be used to pay out our accumulated sick leave, vacation time, and personal leave for the district. Will allow us to budget a little bit more efficiently and easier as we move forward with the termination benefits. Golden Gate Financial Services is 5.2, and this is to service agreement with Golden Gate Financial Services. This is we're going to have get a little help with our time clock system, which is a new initiative for us district-wide. Jeff and Cajun are going to help carry out that initiative that they started last school year. We have trainings in place. We did administrative last week. Tomorrow morning we have transportation, and Wednesday we have food service. And then 5.3 is a gap conversion agreement. We are getting ready for our audit this year. We have our gap financial statements that need compiled, and this is an agreement with Clark Schaefer Hackett to have those services done for us. This is about $2,000 cheaper than last year as a result of some changes on that working capital. But again, a little bit, a couple dollars here and there, it'll go a long way. So Those are my three approvals for the month.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those,
Julie?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Greg?
yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Feller. I recommend item 6.1, the acceptance of gifts. We are so fortunate to have the donation of 10 backpacks with school supplies to McCord Junior High, generously donated by Five Lakes Church.
I'll move for approval. Discussion.
Kim?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
And Kim? Oh, Jill. First time in a while.
Thank you for that donation.
I recommend item 6.2, the approval of an overnight field trip. The Northview High School Orchestra will be going to Chicago to have a performance at the Field Museum, and this is an exciting opportunity for our children. This is just great. So I recommend approval. You'll see it's due, they're going March of 2023, and to Mr. Zeroff and my pleasure and happiness, they're rolling in ahead of time, so that's a good thing.
Well, second. Any discussion?
I have some concerns about the dangerousness of being in Chicago. It's reported constantly about the crime, shootings, random shootings, etc. I hesitate to think that that would be a safe place for them to go. That would be my concern.
Thank you, Mr. Winsky. I think what I can do is Mr. Zeroff and I can speak to not only the director, Hannah Davis, to provide you with additional information in regards to what safety measures they are taking, not only during how they're getting there, but where they are staying, the number of chaperones that are involved, to make sure you have that information and hopefully to be able to protect themselves at ease. But we could have Anna along with Mr. Pugh as well, Mr. Zeroff, if you would please.
As a follow-up question, have they done this trip in the past to Chicago?
I believe they have.
How is it? Have there ever been any incidents?
Not that I know of.
My daughter took a band trip to Chicago years ago during spring break. I went along and I thought it was very well done and really safe.
Any other discussion? All vote.
Julie?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Jill?
Thank you. Item 6.3, I recommend the approval. This is an adjustment for meal pricing for the upcoming school year. There is a slight increase, and you'll see much of this, it's a slight increase, but much of this is due to a change in the government program where we no longer will be feeding all students across the district for free, not to mention the expenses related to the cost of food, the cost of transporting food, and everything around the food chain, which has been a challenge for not only school districts, but restaurants, and including grocery stores. It's just making its way to our district. So there is a slight increase for our school breakfast and our school lunch program.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all vote.
Greg?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Jill?
Thank you. Item 6.4, we do have on the agenda, I think at the recommendation of previous conversation, are we choosing to table item 6.4 at this time?
So my understanding by the state laws, we have to approve these within 30 days before, up to 10 days after school starts. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we have our next board meeting. We can can still approve this and be within our requirements.
Yes, I want to say our next board meeting is August 2nd.
Which I believe is 6
So
days after
we
school.
have a few days in there between, yes.
I would like to table it until next meeting. Do we need to vote on that? So I'll make a motion to table this until our next day, right? August 22nd board meeting.
I'll second. I'm also, this item up on the agenda says school bus stops, and I mentioned it to Jim earlier that all this spreadsheet is a list of every place the bus will be stopping. And I read the Ohio Revised Code today, and I do understand that the board and the district has to have approved bus stops by in that 10-day period. But what I don't understand is that here on the agenda it says bus stops, bus routes, and bus transfers. None of that is on the spreadsheet. So to the extent I'm asked to approve something, I don't feel like we have the information in front of us right now to be able to approve that. This spreadsheet certainly doesn't, and maybe Julie can speak to what has been done in the past on this, I don't know, but that was one of the reasons I wanted this to be tabled, because I don't feel like bus stops is just, that's not routes or bus transfers.
I agree with Kim. I think our obligation is to approve routes as opposed to just a list of bus stops and terminals. And so I'm moving, I'm seconding the motion to table it because I think we need more information.
For me, so this sheet that we got today was the first time I've seen this. I think this is great. So for me, I'd like to see this updated. Obviously, it could change, but maybe after Wednesday, see an updated this sheet. And as I said earlier, the list of times. And so I'd like to see if we can say, on that list where all the non-publics are on those pickup times.
And as an addition to that, what I want to understand is, are we approving this routing, the transfers, the way that the non-publics are transported, or are we just approving these are how many routes there are? I'd like some clarity on what it is we're being asked to approve.
I think we're just approving bus stops, bus routes. I don't think it's ever been an issue. I mean, in the past years, what we've done prior is we approve bus stops, and not even with the times necessarily in there, because it's so fluid and it moves so much. Maybe we would ask a few questions, but I mean, and I think you need to be clear with what you're asking them to provide you, because that's not necessarily a route, right? So you're asking that do you want all the route? I don't even know how many pages that is and what that looks like if you're gonna look. It's like,
Well, this agenda says.
Yeah, it says bus,
stops, bus routes, and transfers, and I have zero information about bus routes and bus transfers.
yeah, I don't think it's ever said this before. It always comes in as here are the bus stops.
And we have tried to align what ORC and our board policy is doing moving forward. Sometimes, as you know, when there's a challenge, it's an opportunity to improve the practice.
Right, because it's never said this before.
Exactly.
And so we just said stops.
And so.
I mean, if we're just approving bus stops, I can vote, I mean, bus stops, but this says.
We did change the language to try to make it more aligned.
Yeah, I think the point is the language has changed, but we're still getting the same information, maybe a little bit more information.
Correct.
So do you want us just to approve bus stops, or do you want us to approve bus routes and transfers?
I think we
don't
can,
have that.
well, and depending on the pulse of the board, we can approve the bus stops, however, with an understanding that we still need to come back with routes and bus transfers, because as we spoke earlier, words are important, and you shared that with me as well.
That's
a route is essentially a series of bus stops, right? And transportation language, we find those very synonymous, and we use those words back and forth. But when we're looking at the language of the Ohio Revised Code and our board policy, I want to say, looking at what's in Ohio Revised Code, this is just one component of 3, because this says, glasses on, bus stops, bus routes, bus transfers. Right now, we have bus stops, and those are subject to change. But we are still in need of learning and board approving routes and bus transfers. So you can table this and do them all at once, or
So
you can miss
the
this one.
agenda item is only bus stops.
Correct.
And you're just putting this language in here to say this is one of the things, so you're gonna have us.
We would have to at the, correct.
You're gonna also, so you're not including now a bus stop as the route. Because I know we had this conversation a couple months ago about, is the bus stop the bus route? Are you saying, well, here are the bus stops, and I know you're not, because this predates you, right?
Well, and I
Is
think,
it the same thing?
well, and it's interesting, I was speaking to Mr. Palmer about this earlier and consulting with the board. And Mr. Palmer, if you don't mind, as yep, come on up, sir. We need your expertise in clarifying ORC with routes and
So-
stops.
Well, I'd like to make the first correction that this is Administrative Code 3301-83-13. And it says that the board shall approve the stops and times.
Okay, but that's what I read earlier.
Yes,
So
that's
I
just
feel
the stops and
If that's
times.
what we're required to approve, the stops and times,
That's
that's
what we
fine,
have.
but I'm not approving, I don't have anything to approve bus routes and transfers right now.
Well, there's no administrative code or revised code that
Right.
states that
That's
you
what I'm
have,
getting at.
but you have to approve the routes and transfers. That's all part of the, who does?
Yes.
Well, that's part of the administration of the school district. And the board is under the standing, under governing of the stops and the times. So,
Understand. So according to the Ohio Revised Code, we have to approve the bus stops, where the bus stops and what time.
yes.
And then, and I read that earlier, and that's what I got. Now, we have a board policy that's separate from that, that's at 6800, that says that the school board shall approve bus routes, and it talks about reasonable time. So if we want to put bus routes on a separate agenda and approve bus stops tonight, based on this information we have,
Because I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's- it's the
intending
desire
to
of
do,
the
because the
board.
routing is not done yet.
Correct. And it's the desire of the board. In conversations earlier, we can table and do it all at one time. Or in hearing conversation now and listening to Mr. Palmer, did you want to say something?
I did
sir?
want to address the board one. That routing never stops, changes never stop. I mean, the complex matrix that makes bus routing so difficult is that this is what is required on a day in and day out basis, and things really change. Streets close, bridges, they close bridges. So that type of having to approve routes is not why the board approves routes and transfers, because of all of those changes.
and I get that, I just want to make sure that it's correct, I know what exactly I'm voting to approve. That it's- And there's also a provision in here about drug testing that, I mean, there's a,
Yeah, Great Lakes Biomedical and Reliable Medical Services.
so is this something?
That's what we use for our bus drivers.
Right.
Due to the lack of clarity, I would suggest we table it.
I have a question. If we don't, obviously we have to pick up kids next week for school. If we don't approve this tonight, how is that?
You can still do it. You have 10 days. That's totally
Right.
fine.
So I mean, do they just do it based on what we have now?
Yes. And I get what, the point is that routes can change all the time. It's going to change throughout the year. But what I'm trying to get at is that we're not being asked to vote on these routes. Is what I don't have any information about routes in front of me. So if I'm going to be asked to vote, it's on stops.
Right, but your agenda item is just school bus stops, so that would be the only thing we're approving here is school bus stops.
So is this just the subject?
But she just put in,
Language
I think, except she just put in what the Ohio, the administrative code is, like, she just put in the language, somebody put in the language of the Ohio administrative code, but the agenda item is just bus stops.
So just this document.
So I don't
I would like to make a remark, and I appreciate your translation and your understanding, but for the sake of clarity, I would like to recommend that we table this and we revisit this, and if necessary, we can send this language out again earlier so that we have an opportunity to know what it says and what we're doing and clarify, because folks, if it's foggy for us, it's going to be very foggy for others. It will be dark, and I want to make sure you are.
And I think you need to be
voting.
clear too about
Absolutely.
the Ohio Revised Code and the Ohio Administrative Code.
Two
because I
different
think that's
entities.
the point you're trying to make, is that they're different things.
Yep.
And then be clear about what we're approving and getting the additional information. And I think everybody, just whatever else you want, send it to Ryan.
Because I want to be clear in that I've had several, the public has asked us to vote or not vote for this plan. And as I understand it, no one's asking me to vote for this plan.
That is correct.
Okay, so I want to make sure that's clear to the public and to everybody that what we are voting on.
Correct.
So,
And I appreciate that clarification, Ms. Kaplan, because it is my understanding, and I believe Ohio School Board Association's understanding, we do not vote on a transportation plan. There is no formal vote. It's routes, stops, transfers, and again, with the nature of school, you will approve those with the understanding that you've all said, knowing they are subject to change. You will change
The next day.
the next day. So I think it really is a formality, but again, I want to be clear, not only for our school record and Board of Education record moving forward. I don't want to come back with the same language in a couple of weeks and we have two pieces of three. So let's just make sure it's tightly packaged and understandable for not only those that are here around the table, but those in our Sylvania Schools family and Sylvania family, learning community. And with that, just also understand that our intention is to inform parents this week of their bus times, as we have every year around this time, ahead of time. And Mr. Palmer, I will be reaching out to you to make sure we have the correct language as by statute, administrative code, revised code, in addition to looking at our board policy as well.
I'll be glad to help. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
so then we need to vote.
So I got Greg with the first, and Tammy with the second.
Is there any further discussion?
Greg?
Yes.
Tammy? Kim?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Thank you for the dialogue and input. Appreciate it. Item 6.5, I recommend the approval of our Sylvania Preschool Program Parent Handbook. And this is an annual item.
I'll move approval.
Any discussion? Call roll.
Julie?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Tammy? Kim?
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 6.6, the approval of the Sylvania Schools Elementary Handbook for the 22-23 school year.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Call roll.
Tammy?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 6.7. I recommend the approval of the Ohio State Test Incentive Program. Again, this is also an annual item for the 22-23 school year.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Call roll.
Julie?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 6.8, the approval of the Sylvania Athletic Coaches Handbook.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second. Kim will second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Call roll.
Greg?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Thank you. I recommend item 6.9. There are a number of policies that are listed for a first read. They include new staff dress and grooming, College Credit Plus, blended learning, dress and grooming for students, weapons, grant funds, cost principles, procurement, use of credit cards, weapons, food services, and administrative ethics.
Second. Any discussion?
I have a slight concern on 7217A in weapons, and that it appears to just trail off or stop.
Same concern, what is that? Wait. It's not, it says.
Is it in there?
It looks like when he went to delete some of the language, he deleted too much.
It just says weapons who are acting with.
So is that item, I'm sorry, what is this?
It's A.
7217.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like several sentences.
Is it?
It's hard to know.
I'm assuming the part that's crossed off is not supposed to be crossed off.
I will correct that.
Yeah, so are we holding this till we know what it says?
72, I would suggest we
Okay.
do.
So you're gonna amend the motion.
This one really doesn't need a motion approval, it's just a first reading discussion.
Yeah, so we can just, because it's not the, we're not approving it, it's
Yes.
just
Oh,
a
right.
discussion. So we
So
can
no vote needs to happen, just have a discussion.
So do we need to withdraw the motion?
And he's just not gonna write it down.
It's not
Yeah.
gonna happen.
Got it.
So you'll send the corrected
Yes.
one out to us before the next board meeting,
Absolutely.
or you put it out for a second read.
Absolutely, and just give me a couple of days because I'm
like
administrative assistant right now, so flying solo, but we'll get it to you for sure. We will figure it out. Thank you. I recommend item 6.10, a revision to the Sylvania Administrative Handbook.
I'll move approval.
I'll second. Any discussion? Call roll.
Julie?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm recommending approval of items 7.1 through 7.8 on a consent agenda basis. 7.1, their license for the teachers. 7.2 are licensed substitute teachers for the upcoming 22-23 school year. Three are licensed administrative subs for the 22-23 school year. 7.4 are licensed mobile tutors. 7.5 is licensed school intern, school psychologist intern. 7.6 is a licensed salary placement correction. 7.7 is licensed resignations. And 7.8 is licensed extra duty.
I'll move approval on a consent agenda basis, item 7.1 through 7.8.
I'll second. Go ahead. Any discussion?
I do want to note, I do believe item 7.5 is also funded through some federal dollars, alternative funding that we received from our comprehensive plan, alternative funding, which is good because it'll offset this salary for the psych intern. It's an annual amount that we are allocated to help cover that cost.
Any other discussion? All right, call roll.
Julie?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Tammy?
I'm recommending approval of items 8.1 through 8.6 on a consent agenda basis. 8.1 are classified additional hours. 8.2 are classified resignations. 8.3 classified personnel changes. 8.4 classified new hires. And 8.5 is classified unpaid.
I'll move approval on a consent agenda basis, items 8.1 through 8.6.
Any discussion? Call roll.
Julie?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Jill?
Recommending approval of items 9.1 through 9.4 on a consent agenda basis. 9.1 are resignations of supplemental positions for the 22-23 school year. 9.2 are our student lifeguards. 9.3 are for supplemental positions for the 22-23 school year. And 9.4 are athletic volunteers for the 22-23 school year.
Move approval on consent agenda basis items 9.1 through 9.4.
I'll second. Any discussion? Call roll.
Julie?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Tammy? Greg?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
All right, board committee meetings. Kim?
Just a few things on foundation. I probably could have told you a month ago. Dave Spees is the new president, and I think we voted him in. Nadia is the vice president of academics, Barry Black, alumni, and John Monahan, treasurer. The website's up and running, and there's a mixer coming up August 27th at the quarry. So, buy a ticket.
The only thing I have, we had a finance committee meeting maybe the other day, and the city of Sylvania is discussing a TIF, and it was recommended that we, as a board, appoint someone to sit in those meetings since we'll be affected by it. So we kind of suggested maybe having Adam sit in those meetings, so I just want to get a sense of the rest of the board if everyone's cool with
Thumbs
that.
up.
All right, so Adam, I will reach out to the mayor and request that you be involved in those meetings.
Great, looking forward to it. Keep me updated.
Jill? You're next.
I'm
Committee.
sorry.
Okay. Tammy? Okay. This is our second opportunity for public participation for non-agenda items. And seeing none, I will move that we go into executive session for the purposes of matters meant to remain confidential and employment and compensation of appointment and compensation of a public official.
We will be taking action.
Yes, we will be taking action after executive. Yes, second. Yes, second. All right. Discussion. Call roll.
Who's the second, sorry?
Jill.
Greg?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes. Okay.
So I will move that we come out of executive session at the same time. I move that we come out of executive session.
Second.
Any discussion? Call roll.
Greg?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to vacate the order of expulsion of the student whose hearing took place in executive session on August 1st, 2022.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Call roll.
Greg?
Yes.
Tammy?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
And Kim?
Yes.
And we are continuing our executive. So I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third. Call roll.
You guys look fast.
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Tammy? Kim?
Yes.
Tammy? Who that?
Jill. Again. Yes.
Jill?
Is it something I said?